Lois, thank you very much for that introduction. That was very kind. I want to send Dr. Barreto's regards. He's the chief of Pediatric Hematology Oncology, and he unfortunately had a patient emergency, as you just heard, but he otherwise would be here and be very eager to speak with you. But I think I can fill in on his behalf. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our group, the Division of Pediatric Hematology Oncology, what we're doing, what we bring to South Florida, and then get into a little bit of my own personal research and perhaps touch on some of the things that are in the news, including some of the interesting use of novel drugs in cancer that are really meant for other things, because it's all related to what we're doing at Sylvester. I've been at the University of Miami for 7 years now. As you heard, I came down from Boston, liking the weather this year very much. And my role is to come up with new treatments for patients with cancer, mostly children, but also adults, where the science takes us to adults and children at the same time, based on Sylvester laboratory scientists and also based on other scientists with whom we collaborate across the country. And that's through something called the phase 1 trial, which is how we first test a drug in a patient. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to come back to some concrete examples of what we're doing in a second, as soon as I go through what the Division of Pediatric Hematology Oncology is doing, and how the PAPCor helps and can help more. So about 3 years ago, a man named Alex Daly donated the resources necessary to bring the pediatric hematology outpatient clinic over to Sylvester, and that's Alex's place, which many of you have probably seen and heard about. And what's more important than the physical plant in Alex's place is that it's actually a home for pediatric cancer at the University of Miami within the walls of the cancer center. So it's almost more important to be virtually there than it is to be physically there, but we have the advantage of both. And what that means is that I can integrate closely with the scientists, think about whether or not giving Viagra or Cialis would be helpful to children. It's an issue maybe I need an ethics consult for that. But it really does help us bring the pediatric cancer research into the deepest part of the research enterprise at the University of Miami. And Dr. Neimer has been a huge supporter of Alex's place, and it's really been a great thing to have him here and help lead the whole effort. The other aspect of our physical plant that I'll touch on briefly is that we have our inpatient unit over at Holtz Children's Hospital. We're unique in the cancer center in that we have basically 95% of our inpatient work happens over at Jackson Memorial Hospital. But this is actually a great opportunity to bring the fruits of Sylvester science to some of the neediest people in the South Florida region, and as well as to children who come from from not disadvantaged backgrounds. We're open for everyone. About 2 years ago, the bone marrow transplant unit at Jackson was overhauled to look just like Alex's place. So patients who get admitted for a bone marrow transplant at Jackson get admitted to a spick and span, sparkling, high-tech, brand new transplant unit. And it's really become the leading institution in the area for pediatric bone marrow transplant. Despite fancy signs to the contrary, we are the pediatric bone marrow transplant center in South Florida, and others are just kind of dabbling in it. We have 3 pediatric bone marrow transplant doctors. Dr. Barreto actually counts as one of those, one of the many hats that he wears, as well as Dr. Andriansky. The other things that we bring to the table as the only university-associated pediatric hem-onc program in the area is national leadership in hemophilia trials, national leadership in sickle cell anemia trials, national leadership in children's oncology group trials, and of course the phase 1 program that I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about. Phase 1 trials in pediatrics or in any field of cancer are the first time that you test a new drug in a patient. So, or in a first time you test a drug that's been tested in other things in that particular indication. So if you look at the example of what Dr. Weed and Dr. Serafini, who you probably haven't met, but who was had the idea behind using that drug in head and neck cancer, the first thing that they had to do was come up with the idea, and then Dr. Weed had to actually design a trial with Dr. Serafini, the scientist, testing that drug in patients with head and neck cancer. And it's actually working by an immune-mediated mechanism, and immunotherapy is a big deal, and I'll describe for you how we're further developing immunotherapy and how Cialis may actually help some of the kids if we combine it with our current plans. So the way that we're studying early phase clinical trials in children is on 3 fronts. One is something called Therapeutic Advances in Childhood Leukemia and Lymphoma. This is a national organization run out of Children's Hospital Los Angeles that has as its goal finding new drugs for children with leukemia and lymphoma. Dr. Barreto got us into that group, and for the last 4 years, he and I have been running a trial of a new drug made by Novartis that was just FDA approved last week for kids with refractory leukemia and lymphoma. Now, it turns out that this drug, and I don't know if any of you were here for the Well-Being Well talk in the fall, and I featured this. This drug has great properties against pediatric cancer. It may have been approved for multiple myeloma, but by looking at what's going on in adult cancer, we were able to test this drug in children. It's good for sarcoma. It's good for brain cancer. I just got a call last night from someone in San Francisco, a leading brain cancer researcher in children, who wants to know more about the drug. But what really tugs at the heartstrings is this drug could be a winner for one of the hardest leukemias to treat in pediatrics, which is baby leukemia. When infants get acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which is the good leukemia, if you hear about all the success stories, you watch, you read Emperor of All Maladies by Dr. Mukherjee. The acute lymphoblastic leukemia is the principal success story of cancer treatment of the last 50 years, that it's very curable, but not when it happens in an infant under the age of 1 year. And so this drug, when we gave it to a baby at UM, it almost wiped out his leukemia. It almost, it just with a couple of pills. So we think that if we get this drug into more kids with leukemia, with baby leukemia, that it could be a potential avenue towards a cure for this rare but devastating illness. That effort is something, because we're part of this national group called TACKLE, we're able to talk to the people at St. Jude, we're able to talk to the leading people nationally and even internationally to try to help bring this drug to patients. So it's affecting both kids here in South Florida, but it has a potential wider impact across the country. Even last night, I received an email from one of the top pediatric drug development specialists in the country, and she wants us to be part of the national discussion. So that's very exciting. We're very proud of that, and we're hopeful that we can make a difference. Even though it's a rare thing for a baby to have leukemia, it's obviously devastating. Another effort that we're involved in that I would be happy to speak to people about offline if they have questions is something called the Sunshine Project. The Sunshine Project is based out of Tampa, and it's funded by a foundation much, with the same sort of wonderful attitude that the PAPCOR has, called the Pediatric Cancer Foundation. And their sole mission is to find new treatments for kids with solid cancers. And we've been a part of that the whole time that it's been going on. And I know that they're excited to work with philanthropic partners here in South Florida. We currently have a clinical trial that I run through them. Dr. Barreto's lab does all the analysis on the patient samples from them. And it's harder than saying, well, we're just going to fund a laboratory, because you're funding a clinical trial, and it's more difficult to understand where the money goes. But without that funding for a clinical trial, we couldn't test these new drugs in children, because there's not another way to find money. that I want to be as a segue into what's really one of my biggest passions is getting a new drug for patients who don't have new options right now. And what I discussed in addition to infant leukemia when I was at Wellbeing Well, and what I want to update you on now, is osteosarcoma. This is the most common bone cancer that children get. By children, I mean anyone 21 years or under. It's the most common bone cancer that they get. Most cases can be cured, but by most, that just means more than 50%. So there's 45%, 40% who we know, even at the outset or soon thereafter, are not going to be able to be cured. And I spent some time last night with a patient's family who is in this situation, getting the roughest chemotherapy. The first chemotherapy didn't work, so then in collaboration with the adult oncologist, you may have heard from Dr. Trent, our adult sarcoma doctor, we gave him the nastiest chemotherapy we could think of, and it gave him a seizure, it made his kidneys stop working, and it just about destroyed him. The good news is it's actually working. We've been able to give it to him another time, but we want to be able to do something besides almost kill a kid to be able to cure them. And even with this, I still don't like his odds. I want his odds to be better. So how do we attack this? Well, we look in the literature, we see, is there a scientist out there who's done something that would suggest a new treatment might help osteosarcoma? Is one of our scientists working on it? Has someone treated a patient just for palliative reasons, just to see if anything would work, and found a remarkable response? That's where we look for the data to see if we can come up with a new treatment. We don't have anything in our pockets yet that's been started. There is a national trial of one drug that's been used for breast cancer. It's not looking like a home run. But what I'm seeing, and what my colleagues are seeing, is that the immune system could be a very powerful adjunct for the treatment of osteosarcoma. It's been known for a long time that the immune system probably plays a role in it. And with new developments in immunotherapy, new understanding of the science, it turns out that you might be able to turn on the immune system in osteosarcoma with a vaccine, and then you may be able to use some of these new targeted drugs, some of which are being developed at Sylvester, to block the tumor from blocking the immune system. What tumors do is they tell the immune system that they're okay. They hide, even though we know that they're different from the rest of the body. Tumors have mutations. Tumors are not normal. They should be seen by the body as foreign and rejected, but somehow they find a way to trick the body. So if you use some of these new drugs to turn that off, it's possible that you'll be able to cure a lot of these children with osteosarcoma. I have a clinical trial right now of vaccination for patients with sarcoma, and we're hoping to treat osteosarcoma patients with that. We have a couple of kids with bone cancer starting off with it right now. Dr. Wilkie, who is under Dr. Trent, he's mentoring her, who's fantastic if you ever get a chance to speak with her, is actually launching a clinical trial with us and with the rest of the immune doctors to study the immune system in sarcoma, and one of these special new treatments that's just been FDA approved, including in patients with osteosarcoma. And it was really a big deal that she was able to get this approved, and we're quite proud of that. The Cialis story, just to explain why, and I know Viagra probably does the same thing. They're very similar medications. It has a side effect that it attacks something called the myeloid-derived suppressor cell. I don't expect you to remember what that means, but those are cells. They exist in your body naturally to turn off your immune response when your immune response gets too strong, but those medications actually block the immune system from being blocked, if that makes sense. So there's a chance that we could use those medications in conjunction with the other immunotherapy to keep the tumor from hiding from the immune system. Lastly, I'll mention something that's related and also in the news. Some of you have seen Dr. Komatar's work, seen how he operates on patients with brain cancer, and probably many people have asked me about the 60 Minutes special that came out a few weeks ago about the polio virus. I think you need to know that we're doing our own tumor vaccination for brain tumors at the University of Miami, both for children and adults. People who come from communities such as yours come down to Sylvester to see me and Dr. Komatar and others to get immune treatments for brain cancer. The principles of the immune system are the same in many different types of cancer. The cancers are just different. So by unlocking the immune system's secrets, we're able to target many different cancers. And so we have a unique brain cancer vaccine at the University of Miami. It's not available at any other pediatric hospitals or any other cancer centers down here in South Florida. And that is sort of my baby. That's what I spend the majority of my time doing. You know, it's been heavily supported by Dr. Neimer. I'm sure that he needs as much support as he can get to help keep supporting these unique things. And that's why we appreciate you all being here and all the work that the PACOR does for the Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center.